I would like to redirect you to this video first, before watching this one. Meta Knight and Kirby's origins have been one of the biggest subjects in the Kirby fandom for a while, and while Kirby's origins have been touched on in Star Allies, Meta Knights are still mostly a mystery, but the truth was under our noses the whole time. It's time to explain Meta Knight's origins and why Meta Knight and Kirby are not related, despite what so many people would have you think. This theory is credited largely to YouTube users Noah Snotty and Azurel. I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly. Links to their channels will be in the description. In Kirby Right Back Atcha, Tiff and Tuff ask Kaboo about Kirby's origins, and he talks about a monster Nightmare created that betrayed him. Actually, I think it's worth mentioning that it doesn't explicitly say that Nightmare created them, and a lot of the monsters that Nightmare uses are actually just stolen and made into monsters, like Ice Dragon and the Scarfies. But if this particular one wasn't created by Nightmare, then this whole story would be confusing and ultimately mean nothing. The first thing we know of this character is it is ball-shaped and uses a sword. It appears black, but that's probably just it hiding its appearance. It's later revealed, and by later I mean literally like the next sentence, that Kaboo is not some all-knowing god and learned this from Meta Knight. If you look back with this knowledge, every single thing Kaboo says traces back to Meta Knight, the Star Warrior War, Galaxia, even the prophecy of Kirby. In the Japanese version, he says he doesn't know if it was Kirby, but suspects it was. In the English one, they're just like, oh, that must have been Kirby, and then dip immediately. This is what started a major misconception that Kirby was created by Nightmare, which is why a lot of people believe that Kirby Right Back Atcha isn't canon, because in canon, Kirby is a reincarnation of Void Termina. This simply cannot be true. Meta Knight doesn't even know if Kirby is real or not until the first episode. How could Meta Knight tell the origin story of someone he's never seen? No. This traitor is Meta Knight himself. Another common misconception with Kirby Right Back Atcha is that the Star Warriors are a specific race of creatures that were made or just born to fight Nightmare. This is simply not true. Look at this picture of hundreds of Star Warriors. Very few of them resemble the signature ball design people think of when they think of Star Warriors. One of them even appears to be human. Meta Knight himself is likely the one that started the Star Warriors, which is just the name of a rebellion against Nightmare. Since it's later revealed that Kaboos are just stations for Star Warriors, we can also assume that Meta Knight created the Kaboos, since there's no divine intervention going on with the Star Wars that were fated, Star Warriors, not Star Wars, that were fated to fight Nightmare. They're just a resistance group. Now keep in mind this is all theory territory from here. Meta Knight was likely one of the monster enforcers that order around the smaller, weaker monsters. Evidence for this is 1, he's much more intelligent than the others. I can only recall like 2 or 3 monsters that even speak, and even still, they just follow the same goals as Nightmare. Meta Knight was very intelligent, enough to realize that Nightmare is evil, that he isn't evil, and that Nightmare needs to be stopped. Second, Meta Knight owns a whip, and while I and most people initially thought nothing of it, thinking it was probably just something he picked up off the ground because that episode is about the whole place being trashed, the way he puts it away shows that it's something he specifically owns and wants to keep safe. Plus, look at how skilled he is with it. A whip is a specific weapon that all the other monster enforcers have. Knuckle Joe, Whippy, and some other guy that I'm probably forgetting. You might be thinking, there's no way a character as important as Meta Knight is just some random monster created by a villain that only showed up 2 to 3 times in the entire Kirby canon. There is actually definitive proof that Meta Knight is a monster that was created by Nightmare, and that this was always the intention. In the beta pilot episode of the Kirby anime, we see Meta Knight get created by Nightmare right in front of us. When I first saw this, I thought, well, it's a good thing they retconned this, because that would be messed up. But it was never retconned. It doesn't get more direct from this. Meta Knight was created by Nightmare. 100% confirmed. In summary, Meta Knight was a monster enforcer created by Nightmare that betrayed him and went on to lead a resistance against him called the Star Warriors. Meta Knight also created the Kaboo as resting stations for Star Warriors and told them the legends and stories of the Star Warriors to give other people hope and create a facade that the Kaboos are some demigod, because he's probably not happy about being a monster and a traitor. So he hides his own truth and passes it on to Kirby. There are a few important details yet to be mentioned. Who created the legend of Kirby in the first place? It's likely the same ancients that worshipped Void Termina. It says in their scrolls that Void would one day be reincarnated as an ally. Actually, I think it's worth mentioning that I don't think it actually says that, and it says that they are thinking about writing new scrolls that say that or something like that. And Meta Knight just tagged on the Star Warrior bit. Kirby wasn't naturally destined to fight Nightmare. That was completely Meta Knight's doing. We can even see these legends of Kirby on the walls in the Chameleon Arm boss fight, so that's not just a theory. There are ancient scribbles of Kirby. I don't know why I said scribbles. Hieroglyphs of Kirby. We can assume that the Warp Star was also in the legends because Meta Knight made a special pedestal for it under the main Kaboo. One last thing. How did Kirby get his starship? If all the Star Warriors had starships, and Meta Knight assembled the Star Warriors, then logically, Meta Knight also built the starships. But Meta Knight has never seen Kirby until he arrives. So, who gave it to him? Did Meta Knight just give a starship to the ancients so they could give it to Kirby when he was reincarnated because they were watching closely and know exactly when it would happen? And if so, why not do it himself so he doesn't have to question the truth of it all? And this is assuming that Meta Knight even met the ancients in the first place and wasn't just someone who read their scrolls. Considering Kirby is just drifting through space, I imagine he was born with it. So this is going to have to be a part where my only explanation is divine intervention, or just this thing that I literally just thought of right now, that he just was not born in outer space, was born somewhere and found a starship because fate and whatever. Since they're probably everywhere because all the Star Warriors died. Their ships probably, some of them survived. I don't know. Don't get me wrong. This is only an inconsistency within the show itself. This does not in any way argue against Kirby Right Back At You being canon. One last thing that isn't exactly related but is still important is the anime is home to one of the few named ancients, Photron, the creator of Galaxia, yet no one pays attention to him. No one even integrates them into their theories, even though they consider Galaxia's name canon and everything about Galaxia to be canon. Even the people who don't consider Kirby Right Back At You canon usually say that Galaxia is canon. So why does no one ever talk about Photron? I don't know. They just choose not to. Maybe that's because he was only mentioned in one episode. Anyway, if you can find anything else on Meta Knight's origins inside the anime or outside, make sure to tell me in the comments. Like and subscribe or something.